Hey everyone. Today we're going to talk about a pretty big shift happening in the world. It feels like an old, very simple philosophy is making a comeback. The idea that at the end of the day, strength is the only thing that really counts. Let's just jump right in. There's this old saying, he who holds the stick owns the buffalo. It's a pretty blunt way of saying that might makes right. For decades, the world has tried to operate on a set of rules and agreements. But that seems to be changing. Big, powerful nations are starting to act based on what they need, strategically speaking. And we're going to start our look at this in the frozen north, up in the Arctic.
Okay, so first up, Greenland. This huge island, which is technically part of Denmark, has all of a sudden become the focus of a very, very open attempt by the United States to just acquire it.
Now this is where it gets kind of wild, and honestly, a little shocking. This isn't just some political back and forth. The Prime Minister of Greenland actually issued this incredible warning to his own people, telling them to get ready for a possible U.S. invasion. He urged them to stock up on food and supplies, saying he just couldn't rule out a direct American attack to seize the island. I mean, think about that. That's a leader telling his country to prepare for the worst from an ally.
So, why Greenland? What's the big deal? Well, former President Trump spelled it out pretty clearly. Geographically, Greenland is in the perfect spot for a missile defense system. The logic goes like this. If Russia ever launched missiles at the U.S., a base in Greenland could be the first line of defense. It would be a critical shield securing the American mainland. It's all about geography and military strategy, plain and simple.
All right, so from the freezing Arctic, let's jump halfway across the globe to the warm waters of the Indian Ocean. Because there's another island here, just as important, that's caught up in this exact same way of thinking.
And that island is Diego Garcia. It's this tiny, remote little atoll, but it also happens to be one of the most vital overseas military bases the United States has. I mean, its location, smack in the middle of the Indian Ocean, gives the U.S. incredible reach over Asia, Africa, and the Middle East.
But here's where it gets complicated. The U.S. runs the base, but they don't actually own the island. In fact, international courts have been very clear. Diego Garcia legally belongs to the nation of Mauritius. The base operates on a lease agreement, a deal that goes way back to when the United Kingdom was the colonial power in the region.
So why is this little island so important to the U.S.? Well, for one, it's a forward base for their long-range B-52 bombers and, as many reports suggest, even nuclear weapons. It lets the U.S. project its power across the entire region, it's a key tool to counter China's growing navy, and it even provides critical support to partners like the Indian Navy. It is, simply put, an irreplaceable fortress.
Okay, so we've got Greenland and we've got Diego Garcia, thousands and thousands of miles apart. On the surface, they look like two totally separate stories, but they're not. They are actually two sides of the same coin, two examples of a single, very aggressive new idea in foreign policy.
And you don't just have to take my word for it. This statement from Donald Trump connects the dots for us perfectly. He saw the UK's willingness to even talk about returning Diego Garcia to Mauritius as an act of total weakness. He argued that countries like China and Russia only respect raw power. Therefore, to look strong, the US can't just hang on to Diego Garcia, it has to go out and acquire Greenland too. So, this is the heart of what we're calling the doctrine of strength. It's a worldview where things like international law, diplomatic deals, and the rights of smaller countries, well, they all take a back seat to one country's pursuit of its own security. If something is considered strategically essential, you have to get it, whether by buying it or by taking it. Now, this doctrine of strength, it doesn't just exist in a bubble. It has real-world consequences, and it creates massive headaches for key American allies. Let's just take a look at the ripple effect on a country like India, which is hugely invested in keeping the Indian Ocean stable. For years, India has been walking a very careful diplomatic line. On one hand, it's always supported its close partner Mauritius and its legal claim to the island. But on the other hand, India gets how important the base is. So it worked behind the scenes to find a peaceful win-win solution. Mauritius would get its sovereignty back, and then the U.S. could sign a new, long-term lease directly with them. And this wasn't just talk. To help make this deal a reality and to support Mauritius, India put serious money on the table, a $380 million commitment.
And that money was meant for big things, like developing the main harbor at Port Louis and helping with environmental projects in the Chagos Archipelago, which is where Diego Garcia is located. This financial backing was a huge piece of the puzzle, meant to help ensure a stable future for Mauritius.
So you can see the problem, right? If the U.S. just decides to ignore the international ruling and annex Diego Garcia for good, that carefully built diplomatic solution completely falls apart. It would basically erase years of India's hard work, not to mention its financial investment. And maybe more importantly, it would make India and other partners wonder, how much is an American partnership really worth?
And that really brings us to the big question here. As the old rules of the game seem to be bending under this new doctrine of strength, what happens to diplomacy? What happens to alliances? In a world where might is right is making a comeback, what's the real value of a promise? Thanks for joining me for this one.